Hello, my name is Ethan Page, and today we're going to be having a look at the third installment of my GPE340 project, having to do with root motion and top-down shooter, specifically this time looking at enemies. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to show how they navigate using a nav mesh. The blue is the navigation mesh, and the pink is the height mesh, which ensures that they actually touch the ground as opposed to hover. The blue is over top the pink, which means any holes in the blue you can see is places that the AI cannot navigate to, which means it can't get too close to these obstacles here, but it can get up these ramps here. This is done with the agent radius. I can set this larger or smaller, and it will make these gaps larger or smaller, as well as the height for going under things like this, and things like these obstacles here. If I click it and go to object, are set to not walkable. They are meant to be objects, even if they would otherwise fit in the step height, the radii rather, the slopes. They are not allowed to be walked on, so the nav mesh ignores them. This is how the enemies will navigate towards me. Now, before I begin a demonstration, you may notice these blue boxes just floating around here and there. These are the enemy spawn locations. Using the same method that I used in the last video for the power-ups, which I have removed, I will place them more accurately in the next installment. The enemies are told to spawn, and it will select one of these 6 random locations and spawn there. Then it will wait a few seconds and spawn another, and another, and another, until a limit is reached. The goal of the player is to kill off a number of these enemies, until a maximum enemy count has been reached, at which point they will stop spawning. There's no explicit victory condition yet, but that will likely be it. This green box here, which I've also got labeled, is the player spawn. I also have incorporated a respawning mechanic for the player as well, so should the player die, which I will, the player will ragdoll, just like the enemies will, and wait there for a moment before despawning and respawning up on his little pillar of safety. I'll show it in action. Now, much as I do when I walk around here, I am using root motion, sort of the point of this project. So do the enemies. If I run around here, he is in fact walking to get to me. Haha, shotgun. I'm just going to stand still. I've got 1% health left. Woo! Yeah, they still follow me on death, which is a bit weird, but... And I'm dead. Now we wait, and my health's back, and I'm up here again. I have a number of lives, and I will stop respawning when all of my lives have been depleted. Let's run over here. And dead again. I believe I set it to just a few. As you can see there, I'm no longer moving back. Camera's not moving back. My health's not restoring, so I am dead. Now, I got through a few enemies that time. But let's show off the code that lets them do all of the simple things, like equipping weapons and shooting at me. So start here. I've got the AI data script. This is just a short, simple little sweet thing. Holds the data for them, which is then utilized by the AI controller. This finds the player, and if it can't find it or my health is 0, it stops the movement. Otherwise, however, it starts moving. Sets the destination to me, desired velocity, and then passes in inputs into the animator, which then sets the root motion to work, just like I do. Rotates towards me as well. I've got this specifically set. If the enemy gets within a certain radius of me, it is set to stop, so it doesn't start walking into me even though it's on top of me already. This allows it to still face me when it does so, so it still has the whole aiming thing going on. Now, this set of code here is all about shooting at me if it has the right shot. There are a few more variables on the weapons themselves which are passed in here. Specifically, it measures an angle from itself to me, and a distance from itself to me, and if both of these things are less than the variable on the weapon, then it can start attacking me. Otherwise, if either of them are incorrect, it stops attacking, can't shoot at me anymore. And then finally, when it moves, it makes sure the velocities line up so it doesn't start sprinting after me much faster than its legs ought to be able to carry it. Got a simple little gizmo script here. This is just for the inspectors, so that you get those colored boxes I showed you earlier. This is what handles the spawning of the enemies. So at the very beginning of the game, this starts up, sets up a repeating invoke to spawn the enemies. And as long as these variables line up, there aren't too many enemies currently active, it's less than the maximum number, then it will iterate this and create a reference, get the health, so that when it dies, it can subtract from that number. And that way it will spawn them every 5 seconds by default. Spawn another enemy, spawn another enemy, spawn another enemy, until it shouldn't anymore. And once it hits the total enemy count, cancels the invoke. Finally, one last little thing actually. Forgot to look at the top here. This is also quite important. This is the part that handles death and the initial spawning and equipping. It adds a listener for on die in the health script that we looked at last time, so that when it dies, it ragdolls, it then waits a few seconds before despawning so you don't get too many bodies cluttering the ground, and then it will respawn by using the object pooling method we looked at last time to teleport it away and set it active again, reset all of its variables. Which is why there's this on enable here. Resets the health, and it allows it to equip the weapon. This is the exact same equip function that is used for the player. It equips a weapon, chooses a random weapon within an array, which contains the 3 weapons I have in the game, and passes the animations so that the guns can take advantage of the animations. Now, I will show off the actual enemy prefab, because that is part of the ragdoll. Go to project once it loads. Prefabs, enemy, scroll all the way down, most of the way down. It's just a simple Unity event on die, sets the enemy ragdoll, enables the ragdoll. And that way they ragdoll. Looks fun. Finally, I incorporated one special little mechanic myself. I'll show it off and then show the code. Yeah, I can rotate myself, I can walk around, it's all well and dandy, but I can't really see too much of what's over here, or much less of what's below me. But if I press the E button I can, and Q goes the other way. This just simply rotates the camera one way or the other, so that you can get a decent view of what's around you, should you want to. Now the code for this is, I'll show off the inspector of it first. I go to the camera, if I can find the camera, there it is. An array of offsets, an array of rotations, as well as a current. I click play again, we look there, grabs the player, and these change depending on which one it's meant to be. The code for this is fairly simple. I saw these rotations, these offsets. That's the current offset, current rotation starts with the default. The default is 0, is that first one there. Then it finds the player, if there isn't one, that also helps with the respawning. And then rotates follow targets and rotate camera input. This is the wonderful function down here that allows me to, when I get the key code input of Q or E, to set this in camera location index up or down, and reset it if it gets to either end of the scope, back down to the other end of the array length, and then rotate the camera. Sets the currents equal to the offsets, the new offsets, and then, as you saw, rotates the camera. Pretty simple mechanic, but also quite useful for this sort of thing, because it is a bit of a pain when people can be behind you and you can't really see it very well. So, now you can see it a bit better. Thank you very much for watching. Join me again in part 4. Should be coming up pretty soon.